Okay, so hi everyone, my name is Natalie. I'm the owner and founder of The Lone Parent Limited, and my main aim is to help single mums break hold of debt and create the financial freedom that they deserve. I guess a little bit about me. I'm a single mum as well. I have two children, a 15-year-old and a 10-year-old, yeah, almost 11. Before I embarked on my business, I was working 9 to 5 as well as a part qualified accountant. And in 2020, in the middle of the pandemic, I managed to negotiate a 6-figure salary. So I want to talk about like increasing your income, like maximizing your salary if you're working. Because I know that women in general have a hard time going into those interviews or into those like personal reviews and really stating what they are worth. From my research, like from women I speak to and my clients, I always feel like women go in at the lower end of the salary and then feel like once they've done a good job, then they'll ask for a pay rise. However, what you've done is you've showed to your employer that you don't value yourself. So why should they? And if that's the way you started your journey, that's how it will continue. Whereas men, they will ask for this, they will go at the top end of the salary and not even have all of the credentials that's required for the role. And actually, I think the last half of my accountancy career, that's what I was doing. And it made a huge impact because it what really accelerated me to clear my debt, because I was increasing my income drastically year after year. So let's talk about how I did this. So before, I'm just going to be checking my notes as well. So if you see me going off to the side, I'm just making sure that I don't forget anything. So before you enter into any negotiations, either where you are already like in a job but you want to stay, but you also want to ask for a pay rise, or you're going to an interview, the first thing you need to do is know your numbers. And this is about researching the market. So say if you are like a talent acquisition person, so it's a fancy way of saying HR, right? And what you would do is you would research the HR roles, the roles that are similar to yours, and you would see what the top end of what companies are offering. And then you would kind of gauge as well what the average is. But what I find is that you don't just want to stick with your own industry. So say if you work in HR in retail, you want to look at HR in tech, you want to look at HR in finance, you want to look at HR in, I don't know, consultancy, you want to look at HR across the board, you want to look at HR in different locations as well. And that's really important, because the reason why I got my 6-figure salary in 2020 is because the company I worked for was based in the US. And they were opening up an office in London, and I was running the like accounts payable department in London. And so knowing that the US pay a lot for a lot, or they call it compensation to their workers, meant that my salary was very competitive. If I'd worked for a UK company as a part qualified accountant, coming in as an assistant accountant, I wouldn't have got that 6 figures. So really checking location. And I think things are really changing now with the whole lockdown, being able to work remotely. For instance, my cousin, she works for an events company, and they've decided to make it all at home. So you work from home, but also they've allowed her to, well, she can also travel the world. She doesn't have to be at home. If she decides to go, I don't know, to the West Indies tomorrow, but also work from there for a few weeks, they've said yes, but they're also paying competitive salaries. So make sure that you're looking, yes, location, geographically and location-wise in industries, because you want this proper research. And also as well, like when you're looking at the job roles, the next bit is think about the experience. Like for me, for instance, whenever I applied for a job, I never made sure that I had all of the experience. And I think that's another thing that women do as well. We like to over prepare. And I think we know enough already, but I think it's the system, like part of school. And that's why girls generally do better at school. We have this whole authoritarian thing. We don't question it. We're taught to over prepare. And actually we should be taught to challenge authority. And we should also be able to trust what's going on inside us, like believe that we know enough, and to not be scared of saying, well, I don't know that, but I'm going to go and research it. And that's how I would come to my interviews. I'd have about 60 to 70% of the experience. And that works for employers, because generally the majority of employers, they're looking to employ someone for the long term. So you going in as well, knowing everything of what they require, you're not going to grow. You're going to find it boring. And yeah, so as I said, employers want someone long term. And also your qualifications, like what I found as well, like sometimes they ask for these qualifications, but just read like the small print, because sometimes they'll say it's not essential, but it's desirable, you know? And so that you can get away with, you can then apply for it. What I'd also say as well is that when you're going with your experience, make sure you're self-promoting. Men, again, do this really well. But make sure that you're promoting, that you are being proud of your achievements that you've done in your current work situation, and say how it benefited the company and benefited your team. And I'd give, like, in the interview, I'd give like 2 to 3 situations, but these situations should also be in your CV as well. And so another thing as well, like your CV is like a great tool. And so if you've got, I don't know, you've got a job and there's like 500 applicants applying for that one role, and you've all got similar qualifications and experience, you really want it to pop, to jump out to the recruiter or to your potential employer. And so what I did was I hired someone to write my CV. And a good CV writer, they'll spend about 45 minutes with you on the phone, and they will really getting to know you in terms of what you brought to your previous roles, what you did, what you enjoyed the most, your achievements, and the way they word it on the CV. The first time I had one done, I was like, oh, who's this? I was so scared to send it out. But I've never looked back since I've done that. I will continue to pay someone to do my CV for me. I think it's a really good investment. I'm not good at those things. So I'm one of those people where I focus on what I'm good at, and what I'm not good at, if I can afford it, I will outsource. And there's no point wasting time trying to get good at something that you're rarely going to use, you know? So that's one thing as well, because what I found with that is that once I got someone to do my CV for me and I sent it out, I was always called for jobs. Also as well, like, I know sometimes as single moms, we can feel a bit like, I don't know, maybe it's just me, I'll speak for myself. But because I didn't go through the normal route, so I didn't go to university. I didn't study accountancy. I didn't, after my A-levels, go to like the big 4 companies and work and study with them. I couldn't afford to go to university, so I worked in a bank for a couple of years, and then this really nice recruiter helped me transfer my skills over into an understandable way onto a CV to be able to apply for accountancy roles. But after I got my first job, they then paid for my studies. But what I found is that when I'm going to job interviews, just be honest, like I'd always, I know some women get a bit frightened about changing jobs because they have it cushy where they, you know, they have a little bit of leeway to drop their kids off in the morning and pick them up after work. But I'd always make a point of saying that at the interview. And actually adding that, yes, I didn't go to university, I didn't work at the top 4, but I actually worked full-time, took on 2 kids on my own, and I studied in the evenings. And so like employers look at that as like an anomaly. But I mean, you guys know, like most of my single mom friends, they've been doing that. You working, juggling kids, like to us it's not new, but to them it's like, wow. And so I always found that that helped me to be shortlisted to the next interview. And also when I'm asking for this pay rise, they see value in it because they see me now as a problem solver. Like, wow, she's working full time, she's got 2 kids and she's studying. Like that's someone who overcomes obstacles. So always highlight your strengths and don't compare yourself to anyone else. And don't downplay your achievements. If you have to practice in front of a mirror, do that actually, because then when you get to the interview or when you're presenting to, you know, your manager about requesting, about getting a pay rise, you feel like you actually own what you're saying and you don't feel uncomfortable saying what you're saying because you've practiced it so many times in the mirror. When negotiating your salary, because you would have at this point you would have done the market research, and you need to have a number that is non-negotiable, that you will not go below, and this non-negotiable number must be more than what you're currently getting as well. We're not settling around here. But when you have that number, do not give it to them voluntarily. Just wait. So which brings me to the next bit. So say, as I said, you're talent acquisition and you've done your research and you know that the top end of the market, the salary is paying around 70K, while the average is around 50K. So your salary range will be between 50K and 70K. However, you want to add on an additional, I don't know, say about 10K, and that 10K is, how is it? Your 10K, that 10K you've added on is because of your experience, your recent experience that you've now gained in your previous role. And maybe you've done some training as well, or you've gone on a course, or you've done self-study. You know, they say, is it 10,000 hours makes you an expert? So once you've done that, so say all of that is equivalent to 10K. So now your salary range, so that brings you now to 60K. So your salary range is between 50K and 70K, but you will not go less than 45K, okay? So, and your minimum, as I said, must be your salary must be more than your existing salary. So I'm not sure if I explained that right. So when you go into negotiation with that, you want to say that I'm asking for 60K, okay? So 50K would be your minimum, 10K plus would be what your experience that you acquired and any kind of training you've done, even self-study, like that is still training. You need to include that as well. So say that's equivalent to 10K. So you're going to be going in there asking, well, my salary is between 60 to 70K. And maybe you don't want to go any less than 50K. Okay. Okay. Okay, so the next bit is about applying for jobs, which I've touched on, that feels that you're not qualified for. So when I speak to women and my clients, they all feel like they need to have all of the qualifications in the world to be able to do the job. They need to be fully experienced. And as I said before, men operate totally differently. And so with this, I just want you to think about, like, write down all of your achievements that you've done, and think about what that brought to the company. Did that generate income? Did it save the company money? How did that help your team? And what else do I want to say? Yeah, and that's it on that one. Sorry. Yeah, and that's it on that when it comes to qualifications and experience. Just don't feel like you need to be fully qualified for the role. And also as well, I always found that there were some qualifications that they said they were essential, but when I said that I was, I'm studying at the moment, they were willing to offer me an interview. And usually they would then offer me the job because I came with a wealth of knowledge and experience. I didn't have the qualification yet to back me up, but I knew what I was talking about. And you'll find that you all know, you're probably all experts in your roles, in your jobs. So next bit I want to talk about is about LinkedIn and how to use it as a tool. So the first thing I would start doing is making sure to update it like you would a CV. Like, as soon as I start a new job, I save my CV down onto their drive, and I start anything, I start adding it in. And that's what you want to do to your CV, onto your LinkedIn. And the reason why I say this is because when I did it and became a bit more active on LinkedIn, I then stopped looking for jobs because I was always headhunted, which is good, you know. Don't have to look for a job anymore. Someone else does the work for you. But it's a great networking tool. So you want to make sure that your skills are updated. When any new skills you're learning, you're updating it. And it's really good if you can get someone from the company that you work in as well to validate your skills. I have this thing where people validate your skills, and also like network with people who are in similar roles as you as well, and just get involved in a community, get involved in like groups. So it's kind of just like being passionate.
A question.
Yeah.
Asking, in terms of when you're either writing your actual CV or in terms of updating your LinkedIn information, have you got any advice for kind of those parents that have had, you know, several years out of work, maybe, you know, that period from having their children to their children going to school, how to kind of address that? And I think because some people see that as quite a negative or quite a, you feel uncomfortable, don't you, because you've got this gap in your career. Have you got any advice for that person?
Yeah, because that was the same as me. And, yeah, just be honest. Like, there's like, I wouldn't sugarcoat anything. I think just be honest. I was always honest about what I was doing. I just said I was taking time out to look after my children. And also think about what you was doing during that time. Like maybe you was like, maybe you took up a hobby, maybe you learned a new skill. I would add that in. Like for me, I studied as because it was for free. So I studied as a beauty therapist. I'm a qualified beauty therapist. I hardly ever used it, but I know how to do good massages and facials. But yeah, I would just be honest about what you was doing, because usually it is down to children, and that's it. Would you recommend having an employed job and a side hustle to make ends meet? Yes, I would. If you have the time and you're not falling into that hustle culture, because that is really unhealthy, and you'll find you'll get burnt out and depressed. But I think if you have the support, like you've got really good network around you who can help you with the kids, then I think having an employed job and a side hustle to make ends meet is a smart thing to do. LinkedIn profile, can your current employer see it, as you don't want them to know you're looking for a job? You can put it on private, but if you just pay it, maybe if you haven't used LinkedIn's premium, you can use their free trial and you can hide stuff like that. So give that a go. But if not, you'd have to pay. If you've already used their free trial, then you'd have to pay for it, but just pay for it for the time that you're using it. And it will keep your profile private, like, so people can't see, your employer specifically can't see that you are looking for a job. Or you can, if you don't want to pay for it, you can create a job search. So you filter it, and what LinkedIn does is, based on what filters you've chosen, every day they send you jobs. Also as well, which is a really good tip, is when you're applying for jobs, apply for it between the hours of 7 a.m. and 9 a.m. Because what that does, it hits the recruiter's email box from top to bottom, and they always start from the top. They never start from the bottom to top. So you will always, by 10 o'clock, if you've applied for like 5 jobs first thing in the morning, then you by 10 o'clock, you'd have calls. Well, actually between 8 and 10, you'll be having calls, because the recruiters do start early. And another thing I would also say is that, like, make sure, like, be pedantic when you're looking for your jobs. So I would do in the evenings, I'd go through like all the emails that I'd get from all like the job sites, and I'd look through all the jobs, and I would then set them up. I would choose which ones I would apply for, then I would set them up, so that in the morning, between the hours of 7 and 9, when I'm applying for those jobs, I'm not having to search. They're already set up already. The link's already saved. I'm just literally just applying. So that's what I would do. And you want to do it in that way so that it gives you the freedom, where they are, like, I always had 3 job offers. By the time I've done that whole process, by the end of all of my interviews, I'd have 3 people offering me a job. And so it meant that those 3 companies, they all accepted my salary request. And so then I'm sitting back and I'm now thinking about what would be the best fit for me.
But do you have any top tips to manage debt and increase savings?
Yes. So top tip is to make sure that you're on a budget. And I'd say the zero-based budget. So that means once you put your figures in your budget, it has to come to zero. So it means that every penny is accounted for. The next one I'd start looking at is reducing your expenses. So you've got your essentials, like your bills, food, maybe even car payments. But then after that, like takeout, eating out, what else? Clothes, shopping, TV, stuff like that. See where you can reduce them or eliminate them. But when you eliminate them, I know it feels restricted in the beginning, but just remember that it's just for a small amount of time, just until you've got your debts under control. and then figure out which debt method you're going to use. Are you going to use the debt avalanche method or the debt snowball method? And the debt avalanche method is when you put your debts in order of smallest to biggest, but in terms of interest. So you want the smallest interest and then the biggest interest to the smallest interest. And so you tackle the debt with the biggest interest first. Or use the debt snowball and you arrange your debts from smallest to the biggest and you tackle your smallest one first. I did the debt snowball method, but that's because I can be impatient and I like results quick, because that's what keeps me motivated and keep going. And to increase savings, reduce expenses, but there's only so much expenses you can reduce, and you really need to think about increasing your income, like creating a side hustle.